I was driving through rural Arizona, a stretch of desert road that felt like it had been forgotten by time, somewhere between the historic mining town of Bisbee and the legendary Tombstone. If you've ever been out there, you know, it's a place where the horizon just melts into a hazy, shimmering heat, where the sky is an impossibly vast canvas of deep blue by day and a dizzying sprawl of stars by night. Endless sand, faded asphalt snaking into the distance, and those old, weathered metal mile markers like silent sentinels, ticking by one after another. It was around 1:30 a.m., the middle of July. The kind of oppressive desert heat that clings to you even after sunset had finally receded into something tolerable, a dry, cool whisper against the skin. I'd been on the road for hours, the miles blurring into a hypnotic rhythm. My phone had lost service long ago, a useless brick in the cup holder, and the only company I had was the steady, lulling hum of tires on the pavement and the faint crackle of static on the radio, occasionally punctuated by a distant country song fading in and out. Then I saw it, mile marker 237. Something about it immediately caught my eye, pulling me from my drowsy haze. The sign was pristine, almost unnaturally so. Unlike the others, which were sun-bleached to a pale ghost of their former selves, or riddled with bullet holes from target practice, this one looked brand new, as if it had just been installed. Its reflective surface gleamed under my headlights, the numbers sharp and distinct. I remember thinking, weird, that's a new one. I drove on, shrugging it off as a curious anomaly in the vast, unchanging landscape. Maybe 15 minutes later, a chill snaked up my spine. I passed it again, mile marker 237. My foot instinctively eased off the gas pedal. I slowed down, a knot forming in my stomach. I thought maybe I was just tired, hallucinating from the long hours behind the wheel. I marked the time on my dash clock. 1:47 a.m. I tried to reassure myself, telling myself it was impossible, just my mind playing tricks. I drove for what felt like another 20 minutes, sipping the now lukewarm gas station coffee, my eyes scanning the endless black ribbon of road, desperately looking for any landmark, any sign of progress. And then there it was, mile marker 237. Again. This time the creeping unease morphed into outright dread. I slammed on the brakes, the tires squealing softly on the asphalt. I threw the car into park, my hands trembling slightly on the steering wheel. I had to see it, had to touch it, had to prove to myself that I wasn't losing my mind. I got out of the car, the silence of the desert pressing in on me in almost palpable weight. The air was still, devoid of even the faintest breeze. I walked slowly, deliberately up to the sign. I reached out, my fingers brushing against the cold metal, and recoiled slightly. There was something oily on the surface, a slick, viscous residue, almost like the sign was sweating. It was a bizarre, unsettling detail that etched itself into my memory. I turned back towards my car, my flashlight beam cutting a path through the oppressive darkness, and froze. My breath hitched in my throat. There were footprints in the dirt, dozens of them, barefoot. They weren't scattered randomly, they formed a clear trail, leading directly away from my car and disappearing into the inky blackness of the desert. I hadn't seen anyone. No other cars had passed me, no lights in the distance. Just these prints and an overwhelming, unnatural silence that swallowed every sound. Against my better judgment, a morbid curiosity compelling me forward, I followed them with my flashlight beam for maybe 20 yards. The prints were distinct, showing the clear impression of toes, yet they seemed to vanish into thin air as abruptly as they had appeared, like the person or thing had simply ascended into the night sky. The sheer impossibility of it sent a jolt of primal fear through me. I ran back to the car, fumbling with the door handle, my heart hammering against my ribs. I threw myself into the driver's seat, jammed the key into the ignition, and floored it, the tires spitting gravel as I peeled away from that cursed mile marker. I didn't stop, didn't even glance in the rearview mirror, until the first hint of dawn painted the sky, and I saw the welcome lights of Tucson appear on the horizon. Later, after I had somewhat regained my composure, I searched maps, meticulously retraced my route on online services, and scoured trip reports for that stretch of road. The chilling truth stared back at me from every source. There is no mile marker 237 on that road. It shouldn't exist. Yet I saw it, touched it, felt its strange, oily surface. The memory of those bare footprints in the desert still gives me nightmares. My friend and I were coming back from a hiking trip in the wilds of Pennsylvania, a beautiful but often isolated region. We were taking a series of back roads, relying on our GPS, hoping to avoid the inevitable traffic snarls that plague the main arteries, particularly on Route 6. The GPS, with its calm, authoritative voice, chirped that we'd save a quick 20 minutes with this shortcut, just a left turn onto Rolly Hill Road. Nothing unusual, just another winding country lane in a state crisscrossed with them. But the second we turned onto that road, an unsettling sensation washed over me. That wasn't just a feeling, it was almost physical. The air thickened, becoming heavy and strangely still, as if all sound had been muffled. My ears popped, similar to the pressure change you feel when rapidly gaining altitude in an airplane. On both sides of the narrow road, the trees pressed in tight, their branches interlacing overhead, forming a dense, verdant tunnel that seemed to swallow the light. Every turn we took, every slight curve in the road just led to more of the same. More trees, more asphalt. There were no signs, no intersections, no driveways, no clearings, and disturbingly no obvious place to turn around. It was as if the road itself had become a closed loop, an endless monotonous corridor. We started to lose daylight fast, and the way the trees blocked the sun was profoundly wrong. It wasn't just the natural descent of dusk. The shadows bent upward, reaching for the sky in distorted, unnatural angles. I swear they didn't move with the car. They seemed fixed, static, independent of our motion, like a painted backdrop in a sinister play. The growing darkness intensified the unsettling atmosphere, turning the green tunnel into a foreboding cavern. Then ahead of us, through the gloom, we saw a woman walking slowly, deliberately, down the very center of the road. She was barefoot, her steps silent on the ground. She was wearing a flimsy, thin hospital gown, the kind that ties in the back. Her hair, long and dark, hung wet down her back, as if she had just emerged from a shower, or more disturbingly, a body of water. My friend, ever the Good Samaritan, slowed the car to a crawl and rolled down the window. "Hey," he called out, his voice slightly strained. "Are you okay? Do you need some help?" She didn't respond immediately. She just turned with an unnerving slowness, her head tilting slightly. Then she smiled, and that's when the terror truly set in. Her teeth were wrong, horribly, fundamentally wrong. Too many of them, far too many, crammed into her mouth, sharp and uneven, like shattered porcelain. Her eyes, shadowed by her wet hair, seemed to hold an ancient predatory glint. Without a word, without a moment of hesitation, my friend slammed the car into reverse. He floored it, the engine roaring, gravel spitting from under the tires. We sped back the way we came, desperate to escape that twisted smile and those unnatural teeth. But the problem was, we couldn't find our way out. Every turn we took, every frantic attempt to break free, inexplicably looped us back to that same stretch of road, that same unsettling tunnel of trees. At one point, in a chilling repetition that defied all logic, we passed the same rusted-out Chevy truck no less than 4 times. It was identical each time, the same distinctive dent on the fender, the same broken headlight. The 5th time we passed it, a new layer of horror was added. The headlights of the rusted truck were on, piercing the growing darkness, shining directly at us. It was as if something was mocking us, or perhaps waiting. Finally, in a sheer, unadulterated panic, my friend slammed the car into park, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white. "We're walking," he yelled, his voice hoarse with fear. "We'll get out on foot." But as soon as we unbuckled our seatbelts and reached for the door handles, pushing them open, we were instantly, jarringly, back on Route 6. It was bright daylight. The highway hummed with normal traffic. It was as if we'd never turned off the main road, never ventured into that shadowed, impossible lane. I checked the dash clock, my eyes wide with disbelief. It was 2 hours later than when we'd last checked it, yet according to the GPS, we'd only been gone 30 minutes. 2 hours had vanished, devoured by Rolly Hill Road. And Rolly Hill Road? It doesn't show up on any maps anymore. Not on Google Maps, not on old physical atlases, not on historical surveys. It's as if it was wiped from existence, leaving only a terrifying, inexplicable gap in time. This happened to me and my girlfriend on a cross-country trip, a classic American adventure from the flat plains of Illinois all the way to the rugged beauty of Oregon. We were somewhere near the Wyoming-Montana border, a vast, desolate expanse of rolling plains and distant mountains. It was late at night and our gas gauge had dipped perilously below empty, the little needle quivering on the E. We were desperate, middle of nowhere, no towns for what seemed like 50 miles in either direction, and the nearest gas station an eternity away. The anxiety was a cold, creeping dread. Then, like a mirage shimmering in the darkness, out of nowhere we saw it. A neon sign, buzzing faintly in the distance, its vibrant glow a beacon of hope in the blackness. "You eat, lodging," it proclaimed, the letters flickering with an old-school charm. Relief washed over us, a wave of pure, unadulterated gratitude. The building itself was old, undeniably so. It had real 1950s vibes, with a classic boxy structure and a large, inviting overhang. Pale yellow light seeped from its windows, which were fogged from the inside, giving it a soft, ethereal glow. There was no other car around, which struck us as a little odd for a place advertising lodging and food, but at that point, we were just grateful for any sign of civilization. We pulled up, killed the engine, and walked towards the entrance, the faint hum of the neon sign growing louder. Inside, a man was sitting at the counter, his back to us, hunched over something we couldn't quite see. He didn't move, didn't acknowledge our entry, even as the door chimed softly. We looked around, and that's when the subtle unease began to set in. Everything felt off, like walking into a forgotten movie set. The snack racks were full of dusty brands I'd never heard of, their packaging faded and brittle. There were candy bars with 1980s logos, their wrappers crinkled and discolored. Expired milk in old-fashioned glass bottles sat on a perpetually humming cooler that seemed to vibrate with a life of its own. My girlfriend, ever the more practical one, walked up to the counter and tapped the small, tarnished bell. The sound was faint, muffled. Nothing. The man at the counter remained still, utterly unresponsive. We exchanged a nervous glance. Finally, slowly, the man turned around.